My screen and voice is audible, guys, correct?
Yeah, we can see the screen now.
Perfect, thank you. So last time we discussed about what is work item. We saw how do we create work item. We saw how do we create queries and things like that. Now there's one topic before we move on to the CI/CD part. There's one topic which was remaining is branching and merging strategy. We saw what exactly is Azure repos. In Azure repos, we saw how do we create branches and pull requests and many things. Now, what is the condition to create branches? Do we create branches blindly? We just go and start creating branches, or there is some condition out of it? So that is something we'll understand that in reality, what will happen when you are given tasks to set up entire thing for your project, like setting up the pipelines, setting up the branches, setting up the repository. So how many branches should you create? What is the correlation of the branches and the pipelines? So that needs to be understood very wisely. Now let's go and understand this with a diagram. So I'll give you a strategy, branching and merging strategy, which will be very generic. This strategy can be used for a large scale project, middle scale project, small scale project. It can be served to large team. Okay. But yeah, this strategy you can tweak if it's a small team and it's a small project, and if you don't go with multiple branches strategy, then you can cut down the branches also depending upon your requirement. But yeah, this can be used, this strategy you can use it as a template. You will not implement the exactly same template in any of your project, but you may tweak depending upon the requirement, because the strategy is something you'll not alone decide. You'll come up with the strategy, you'll discuss the strategy with the development team, and based on the requirements you will either make some changes to it, or you can go with the same strategy. Okay, that is what happens in reality. Okay, so let's talk about branches first, like how many branches you should have and what are the importance of those branches. So let me start with the very first branch. This is nothing but your develop branch. So these are the branches which you will be creating. The whatever branches I will speak about right now, that will be created by the DevOps engineers, and that will be managed and supervised by the DevOps engineers themselves. Just keep that in mind. Okay. Now the first branch is develop branch, and these are the branches wherein you will set up your policies. So this develop branch is basically used for development related activity. When I say development related activity, all your future and present development code will be kept over here. So a develop branch basically will be used for development related activity. Just keep that in mind. Okay. So all your future present code will be kept over here. So this branch will be used by developers for all development purpose. Okay. Now once the development is done, how exactly they will do the development, that is something we'll talk about later. But once the development is done, the code will be moved into release branch. How the code will move and all, that is something we'll discuss later. But for now, the other branch is release branch. Release branch is basically used for release related activities. Your current release, so suppose you're working in a company, so this is your current release code. Now what is current release code? If you're working for a company and they have a release cycle, to follow. For example, you got a release on somewhere on 26th of Sunday. Okay, So this week, the complete week starting from Monday till Saturday will be a release cycle week. So during this week, you will be start putting your codes in your pre-prod environment. That is what happens in reality. During this week, you'll start putting your codes in your pre-prod environment, and all your codes will be pushed into pre-prod during this week itself, because you're following a release cycle, and during this release week, your code, your source code will be moved into your pre-prod, and on Sunday it will be moved into production. That is what release cycle means. Okay, so during this release cycle, only the code which is moving into production will be moved into release branch. Not everything will be moved. Only the code which is moving into production will be moved from develop branch to release branch. And how this will happen, guys? What is the strategy will apply if I want to move only those codes from develop to release branch? How do you do it? Anyone? We have done this, correct? How do you do it in reality if I want to do it?
You you merge the code, or you can move it.
Okay, if I do a merge, don't you think everything will get merged?
We cherry pick.
Awesome. That is what we'll do. Cherry pick, guys. This is where your cherry pick concept will come in picture. Okay, because develop has many code. It has future, present, past, all sort of development is happening on develop branch. And if you just have a simple pull request, if you're doing it, is all will be pushed into release, which we don't want. Release is only current release. So whatever is going in the current release, only those changes needs to be pushed into the release branch. Good, very good. Okay, now last but not the least, the third branch is we got the main branch. You call it as main, master is one of the same thing. Mostly it is main now. Okay, main branch is the place wherein you keep the golden copy or production code over here. So this golden copy is basically the latest running version on production. You did your release, and you got your release was successful and you got the final code. Now that final code will be merged with main, and that will be tagged like whatever version 1.1 or major release, minor release. So the tagging will be done over here in the main, and that will be marked as the golden copy. So that means now when you do the other sort of development, and like suppose you have deployed version 1.1, that was successfully deployed, everything was looking good. Now you have worked on version 1.2 and you deployed version 1.2. Now the version 1.2 has some sort of created some sort of bug or issues in your production. Now what you can do, you can directly go to your main branch, take the version 1.1 again, revert it back to version 1.1. You're back to normal. So this is the main branch which is keeping you the golden copy, the production copy of your servers application. So basically, if anything happens, and very limited people will have access to the main branch, not everyone will push things to main branch. Okay, so any given point of time, for any foreseen reason, if anything happens, this main branch will have the necessary files which you can revert to. So this file has basically this will have the previous running version of your production, not the new one, but the previous version, which was stable, basically the stable version, I would say. Okay, so any given point of time, if you want to revert back to the main, and get the copy, the right copy, and deploy it in production. That is quite possible. Okay, so this is three important branches: develop for development related activities, release for release related activities, main wherein you keep your golden copy or production code of your environment. Now, how do the developers start working? Will they push things directly to the develop branch? No, will not permit anyone pushing from locally directly to the develop branch. Remember, I was talking about you cannot push unnecessary history also, because that is something we need to avoid. If it is one or two developers, guys, I can even take out release branch from you. I can put things directly to the main branch. But if it's a big team, I'm talking about 50 developers working in a team, you need to be very specific. You need to have all sort of policies and security in place so that you don't have to look into and go and look 50 people at a time. So this is a strategy for a big or a mid-scale team. Now, how a developer will start his day? Okay, will he push things directly to a develop branch? So the answer is no. What developer will do? He will create a own temporary branch for himself. He will create own temporary branch for himself. Now tell me one thing. From which branch should he create a temporary branch? Which branch should he use to create a temporary branch for himself for development activity?
Develop,
We should create from which?
develop,
Develop. Any reason why develop?
because it's going to have the most up-to-date code.
Okay. Anyone else? From which branch should it create? Anyone else wants to try? The developer should create this temporary branch from which branch? Develop branch, release branch, main branch, from which branch? I say you are the developer, for example, and you need to start working on one new module. So you need to go and clone my existing repository. Which branch you should clone and create a new branch out of it?
I think you go to the main branch
Main branch. Any reason why main branch?
because it has the coding code.
The working copy of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, guys. So thank you for your inputs. But the answer is the developer will be creating the branch out of develop branch. That was absolutely right. The reason is straight away. If you create branch from release, for example, then it just has your current release code. So it will not have the all the codes which you need for your development activity. If you create a branch out of main branch will have your previous code. So it's still the main branch will not have the current development code. Like after the previous deployment, if the other developer have done some sort of other sort of development, those codes will not be there. Like suppose I am the developer and I'm just working on some sort of code which is built after the release. So I'll not get those codes from the main branch. So the answer is right, develop, because the develop branch has all sort of code, your future code, past code, present code, every all sort of codes you have in your develop branch. So when they create a new temporary branch, this guy over here has the branches will be cloned out of this branch. Okay, so that is absolutely right. Now once this branch is cloned, they do all sort of their development activity and they deploy things on the local VM. So this is where they deploy it locally. So this is their local system, local PC, you would say whatever you want. So this is where they will start deploying things. Once the code is built, they will deploy things to the local PC. Now, once they have tested everything locally, they need to deploy things into a dev environment. So we'll take 4 environments over here. We'll talk about dev, QA, then we'll talk about stage and production. Dev, we all know that it's used for development activity. So whatever the developer builds, the first thing they deploy it on local, then they later deploy it on dev virtual machine. Then from there, they do all sort of beta testing and all sort of testing what they want to do. And once they are thorough that yeah, everything is looking good, they put it on QA. So QA is basically the environment where all the QA team, the tester team, they do all sort of testing over there. Once the code is deployed, the QA team jump in and they start running all their automated manual testing and everything. Once the QA gives a go ahead, then the code moves to the stage. Now the stage is like a pre-prod environment, guys. So it's like a replica of your production. So before going to actual production, the code moves into stage and all sort of integration testing happens over there. If you want to do any kind of load and all, so even the load testing happens in the stage environment. Sometimes you will see companies, they will have a separate load environment, but yeah, sometimes you'll see this load testing is also happening on stage itself. So all sort of testing, integration testing, and they see if how it exactly it is behaving, and that is stage for you. Then during the production release, the code moves into production. So the expectation is once the code moves into production, after all this testing, there shouldn't be any issue in production. That is what the expectation is, but that never happens. Okay. So in many cases, in many companies, they have, even though we call it as the stage and prod exactly same, there are configuration differences which comes in, and we end up getting issues on production. That's a classic monolithic example which I'm giving right now to you. Okay. Microservice, the world is different, but the stages will be exactly the same. The only difference is in place of VM, we'll have pods, containers, all these. Okay. Now, from develop, once the code moves into develop, how do we move the code into develop? So we'll raise a PR, a pull request, and depending upon the merge type, we'll start moving the code into develop. And from develop, the code will be moved into either into dev and QA environment. Okay. So let me, so this will be, just imagine this is your dev environment and this is your QA. Okay. Now from develop temp branch to develop branch, you will have your code will be moved. Now, how does this code moves exactly? What is the merge type you will be using over here? This code, you'll have to raise a PR from your temp branch to your develop branch. A pull request needs to be created. Now, can you guys guess what will be the merge type over here? We got 4 different merge type, correct? Merge, no fast forward, squash, rebase, and semi-linear. So what do you think, what should be the merge type we can apply over here if when we are moving things from a develop temporary branch to a develop branch? This develop branch is getting used by multiple other peoples. So what do you think, what should be my merge type over here when I'm moving the code to my develop branch? Anyone?
Maybe rebase to keep the branch tidy.
Rebase. Okay, anyone else? What should be the merge type? Think from like you're setting the branching and merging strategy. What do you think you should have it over here?
Um, I think my,
These will merge at work, but I don't really know which one.
Okay, no problem. Yeah,
I think
anyone
my,
else wants to try?
I think my, no fast forward would be better.
Merge fast forward.
Yeah, that way you have like a history.
Oh, perfect. Okay, guys. So merge fast forward is also a right answer, but if you ask me, I'll go with squash. I'll tell you my reason why squash. Okay, this reason could be invalid in some project. It could be valid in some project. As I said, this is just a template which you can reuse depending upon your requirement. Okay, why I say squash, I'll tell you the reason. The squash is basically what it does. It will squash your all your merge and it will create a new merge commit. Correct? That is what it does. Now think of temporary branch. This is a developer who is using this branch for his development related activities. Now while doing his development, he end up doing n number of commits. Like just imagine 200 commits he did while doing the development. Now if either you use rebase, merge no fast forward or semi-linear, what will happen? All this 200 commits will become part of your develop branch. Now, if you keep getting such big commits history from all these developers, just think of your develop branch, how your develop branch will look like. Okay. So in order to avoid such things, you better use squash over here. You're not interested what developer was doing locally, how many commits he did, what all things he added. You're not interested at all. The things which you're interested in all the code what he has developed, the modules which he has created. So yeah, squash is something. If you want to avoid such things, then squash is something we can do. But again, depending upon the requirement, if your manager says no, we need everything whatever developer did, no history should be deleted, then in such case you can go with the first one, merge no fast forward. Okay, over there then you can use merge no fast forward. The benefit of using merge no fast forward, the history will be safeguarded, and on top of it you will be having a new merge commit which will give you the complete source code. So yeah, merge no fast forward could be the second right answer. So once the code is moved into your develop branch, okay, the code, this what you see, this arrow, this is not just for namesake, guys. This will be your actual build pipelines. This will be your build pipeline. Once the build is completed, automatically a deployment will happen in dev environment, and then post that the deployment will automatically happen in QA environment. This flow what you see, this is your CI/CD pipeline. This complete flow is your CI/CD pipeline. Now this is the flow what we will create when we start with CI/CD, guys. So this is something we'll do it in reality. Whatever I'm showing you right now, this is something we'll do practically. Okay. So this is what develop branch is all about. Now during the release week, suppose now we have a release week. Now developer wants to move code from develop branch to release branch. Now again, we'll have a PR, pull request created. Now over here we have something called cherry picking. We'll do cherry picking. Now your merge type could be merge no fast forward, or you can either use merge no fast forward is the best example over here, because by doing that you will have the previous history also. So merge no fast forward should be the best option over here. So wherever you think you need the history, you need to know who has done what changes, then merge no fast forward should be the right choice over there. Okay. Now cherry picking, we all know cherry picking is a term in which you cherry pick specific commits. So as I said earlier, in the release branch, your release branch will have only release related activities. So a simple pull will request will not work. You need to have a cherry picking done. Okay. So cherry picking will basically, what it will do, it will cherry pick specific commit. Like just imagine there are 100 commits. in develop branch. Now, out of those 100 commits, only 5 commit is going in current release. So if you create a simple pull request, what will happen? Everything will be pushed into release branch, which we don't want. So using cherry picking concept, you will have only those 5 commits will be cherry picked and will be pushed into your release branch. And from release branch, the code will be moved into 2 more environments, that is stage and production. So your code will be moved into stage and production. Prod. Again, you will have your build and release pipelines kept away. So why exactly I'm demonstrating this pipelines also over here? So whatever branches you create, guys, those branches will have your build and release pipelines also. So think of it, when you're adding unnecessary branches and give it to the developers, then you need to have those pipelines also created. So this branch, if you see, this branch is related to your develop pipeline. This branch is now related to your release pipeline. Now, whenever there's a change, anything gets pushed into your release branch, then this pipeline will start running automatically. Then once this pipeline is successful, you will have this stage deployment and you'll have your production deployment automatically. Make sense? So whenever you create branch, it's just not the branch. It's not just the branch, it will be your build and release pipeline related to it. Now your production deployment will happen over here. Now you will say, okay, the things are looking good. Your production deployment is happened. Now just imagine you have deployed something called a version, a major release, major, this is the version which you have deployed, version 1.0. Now this code, like the, suppose there were 5 source code, 5 piece of code which you have deployed till production. Now from here, once this things are deployed successfully, then in production you will do all sort of integration, all sort of dynamic testing, all sort of black box testing. You see if everything is looking good, and you got to go ahead from the client that yeah, the new deployment, the new feature looks good. After that confirmation, you move your code to your main branch. You move your code to your main branch, and over here you will again do a PR. Now do you over here we'll do a simple merge, okay, because release branch has only those code. Right now the release branch has only those code which got deployed in production, and all those code needs to be pushed into main branch. So there's no need of cherry picking and anything as such for pushing things into main branch. But yeah, you create a pull request, and over here you can use both the types, guys, depending upon your requirement: squash or merge, no fast forward. Now why squash? Because the whatever history you required, the release branch already have those history, so you don't need those history again. If you have any such requirement, you can do squash. But if your manager says no squashing, we need to have merge, no fast forward, we need to see which developer has pushed these changes for, if anything happens in future. So yeah, so in that case, merge, no fast forward. So this is all are your discussion point. This is something you cannot decide, frankly. You can suggest, and your development team will say, yeah, this looks good to me, yeah, this, let's go with it. Your product owner will give you the go ahead, in short. But these are the things which you need to discuss with your team. Okay, now are we good with it? Anyone has any questions? I think there's some question in the chat. Semantic versioning, so that is something these are all part of versioning. Okay, so we, depending upon the method of versioning and all what you do, We can go semantic versioning and all, like how the tagging happens, how the versioning happens, and all this. That is all about semantic versioning. That is more for developers. This is Victoria. Yeah, Victoria. Those are more for developers. How the tagging happens, how the versioning will happen, how the numbering will happen, depending how. So those are basically semantic versioning. That is more for developer. When you do development, code development, based on the semantic versioning, so there are multiple ways. How do you give these numbers basically? This version 1.0 and all. How do you come up with these numbers? So that is all about semantic versioning. So SAMWOR, the right term is SAMWOR, is a method, a popular versioning schema that used by vast amount of open source project. So that is basically how you give the version numbers. So there is a condition out of it. So you directly don't just end up giving 1.1, 1.2, major, minor, no. So yeah, there is a way of giving the version numbers. So that is what semantic versioning is all about, which talks about the principles based on which you will start giving numbers. Okay, so that is what semantic versioning is all about. But yeah, this is mostly for developers, not for us. Okay, so semantic versioning, also known as SAMWOR. So this is basically used for many open source projects nowadays. So this is nothing but it's a versioning system, how you define the versioning. Anyone else, guys? Are we good till here? Any confusion, any doubt?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, tell me.
I don't know how to put this. Okay, so why can't we just pull a request from either stage or production pipeline instead of going back to release and then pull to main?
Okay. Uh, could you please repeat yourself? I didn't catch it. Sorry for that.
Yeah.
Why do we what?
So why can't we just pull a request from the stage or the production pipeline instead of going back to release and pull a request to main?
Okay. So release is basically we are putting things into release so that this can be deployed till production. Now this release branch is basically having all your current release activities. Now once things are deployed into production, we are good. Everything is looking good. Now you need to maintain that production copy because your production source code is very important in your application. If anything happens, any XYZ happen, any foreseen, anything happens, you need to have that production copy so that if you deploy that production copy anywhere, your application will be up and running again. So you need to maintain, safeguard your production copy. That's why we push things into main branch, so that this main branch is basically kept very separate. No developers will have direct access to the main branch, and this is kept very separate. Hence, you will have your production golden copy kept in your main branch so that no one else can touch it. Okay, because this is not frequently used branched. Frankly speaking, this is very hardly people will be using this branch. The frequently used branches are on develop and release. This is getting used very frequently.
Okay.
People are pushing, committing, and so there is a great chance that we end up corrupting those branches.
Okay.
Okay.
My concern is while we're pushing uh, is going through the stage and production pipeline, what if there's a bug
Mhm.
or a problem, that we had to uh, work on or resolve, um, before we get to the production, which means there will have the perfect code. Why not just pull a request from there instead?
Okay,
Do,
now if you're getting a bug at the stage and production, that is very too late for you. Okay, because that's why we do all this build and everything, so that the bug gets catched over here itself. Your QA team is sitting. Why your QA team is sitting? If they cannot find the bug and the bug somehow reaches at this stage, then you may have to revert everything. You have to remove that code from your release branch, revert changes from your stage, revert changes from your QA, revert changes from your dev, and remove all the codes and start your development activity again.
Okay. All
Now,
right.
but yeah, that is, as I said, now that if code reaches and you find the bug over here, that's too late. You have so many build and you have so many environments previously. You have the development team has to make sure that the bug and everything gets find out either in the dev or in the QA environment. It should not move into the stage also. But yeah, this is technology. We are just saying. But yeah, there's a great possibility that you find the bug in stage or production. Anything happens, go back, take a backward route, remove everything, and do the development again.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. So this is your straightforward strategy which we spoke about. Now let me tell you two more scenarios which will come. Now think of ECR. ECR is what? Emergency change request. Now think of there is an issue because of which your homepage itself is down. Just take an example of child homepage again. Or do you think you'll follow all this? The development team will follow all this, going from develop to release, then waiting for QA to do the testing and things like that? Or putting things in stage, doing a beta testing and all? No. If your production is down, don't you think we'll directly push things into production and get the things resolved as soon as possible? Now, how will you do that? You have all the pipeline setup which goes from dev to QA, then stage and prod and things like that. That is what you will do. Now your things are moving. Now you have an issue. You have emergency change request, a ECR. Now your client is sitting on your head. Now he's telling fix the issue as soon as possible. Now at that time you will not have all this flexibility to put your codes in stage, then release, then cherry pick, and all this you will not have it. How do you handle such scenario? So yeah, so any which ways you will have your the developer will create a temporary branch. Then he will push the things into the develop branch. The same flow he will follow. The code will be moved into dev and QA because you need to put your source code into lower environment to test it before you put it in production. So there's no escape. You need to put in dev and QA because the QA will do all sort of testing that will be done quickly. Post this, the codes will be directly, this release branch will be skipped because the release branch, what did I say? This is only used for release activity. So you cannot put such code into your release branch. Post this, the release branch will be skipped and the code will be moved directly from develop to your main branch. You can do the same sort of activity over here, your PR and squash, because or cherry picking over here. You can do PR and cherry picking over here. And from main, we'll have a pipeline created, which will also put your things into production. Now you'll say, you just said that you're not using production. Now you're using production. Yes, for such cases, yes, we'll use production. If there's any ECR, emergency change request, wherein we don't have time or we cannot even put codes into release branch, in such cases, we'll have to put this code into production as soon as possible. So this is my production pipeline will be created over here also. And once the develop testing is done, directly the code will be cherry picked and it will be pushed into main branch. And from there, my build and production deployment will happen. Later, we can merge this code again with release. That's totally fine. But this is how things will happen. That is for ECR, only in case of ECR, guys. So your ECR code will be kept over here. ECR is nothing but emergency change request. When there is an emergency ticket, P1 ticket which has been created and you need to fix your application as soon as possible, this is what will happen. from main branch. Okay, any questions over here? Why do we put in main and things like that?
So, okay. So the last bit that you spoke about the ECR, when you said you go from develop all the way to main, is that a completely new pipeline, or is it just that you skip the staging stage in the pipeline?
No, it's not a new pipeline. It's the same environment what you have over here. This is the
Oh,
same environment. It's just we created a new extra pipeline, because if I want to move over here in this production, I have to go through release, correct?
yeah.
But we don't have time to go to through release and put it in stage and production and such. Now in such cases, I have a created only for production. I have created new pipeline, and that is pointed to main. So we put things from develop directly, we cherry pick things from develop directly to main, and from main we put it to your production directly.
Okay. And do you have to put like a gate? What do they call it? Gatekeepers for those ones, so that you're only able to do it in the case of emergency change request, or
Yes,
um,
we can have these gatekeepers, we can have approvals. Over here also we'll have main branch approvers. And so there are, see, when you have ECR, then you'll already have the product owner's approval over there. The product owner is saying you go and do it as soon as possible. So yeah, all sort of big short approvals you will have it, because your client is going mad right now. The website is down and you need to fix it as soon as possible, whatever it takes. You will skip everything basically, I'll tell you. In such cases, you'll skip everything and you'll directly go to production. So you should have a separate pipeline. You cannot use the same route, because if you use the same route, tomorrow when you're doing a release, even there is a great chance that you may deploy things again. So yeah, you need to keep things separate. So this is how you will be keeping things separate. So your production, just production, I'm not including stage over here because this is not for stage, just production. Okay, and this will be only used for ECR purpose, no other purpose. This route will be used only for ECR purpose, no other purpose. Okay, keep that in mind. Now there's one more scenario. Think of a scenario that your development team is creating a new feature. Okay, now the client is not sure whether that feature needs to be put into production or not, and the client says to you that I want this feature, but I'm not sure how it will look like. So can you just get this deployed somewhere so that I can have a look and feel, and a small set of users can use it. Then later I can decide whether I want to keep it in production or not. Understood? The client want something called a new feature, but he doesn't want to deploy that new feature in production, but he wants to have a look and feel. How do you handle this? Is very genuine and very simple use case which I'm talking about, guys. This is definitely the development team gets it. So for this, you all these branches which we have created, they have specific purpose. Now for handling such feature requirement, you will have to have a new branch created, and that branch is known as feature branch. You'll come across this naming convention which I'm using. This is very generic, and these are the branches which you will be also creating. So you'll have a feature branch. What is the importance of feature branch? For new feature activities, new feature codes. Okay. Now this, where which environment you will be deploying this code to? Anyone? What do you think, which environment this code should go? The feature branch code?
develop or dev?
Yeah, definitely will go to develop. But there is a environment, a specific environment called as UAT, user acceptance testing. This is the environment where your feature related stuff will get deployed. And this is more exact replica of your production, guys. So whatever you have in production, this UAT will look exactly the same. So when you deploy a feature, a new feature to it, and when you give it to the client, they will have the same look and feel what they will have it on production. So UAT is a additional environment for any such purpose if you have it. Now, yeah, so you are right. Your code will be moved from temp. Again, the developer will start working on a temp branch, put the code into develop branch. Now from develop, again the code will be moved into, the only difference is the code will be moved into feature directly in place of release and main. Now again a PR and a cherry picking, guys. It's the same concept. The concept will not change. You'll have to do a cherry picking, because if you don't do cherry picking, all the codes will be moved, which you don't want. Correct? So yeah, the concept and the problem statement is the same, the PR and CP. Now suppose the code got deployed into UAT, and if the client denies, yeah, this doesn't look good, we don't want to go with, you just drop it from feature. That's it. You forget about it. But if the client says, no, 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 this looks good, I want to have this in my next release, then in that case, your code will be moved from feature branch to your main branch. Sorry, your feature branch to your release branch, and from here the code will be moved into production. So yeah, so whenever there's a request, your client saying, okay, whatever feature you have deployed, this looks good, I want it in production. So yeah, you'll say, yeah, we'll put it in the next release. So whenever is the next release, the code will be moved into the release branch. Again, cherry picking will be done from feature. A PR will be raised to your release branch. A cherry picking will be done again, and the code will be moved into production. These are the typical scenarios which will come in reality. And all this, what you see, the branches. So these are the 4 branches which will be managed by the development, by the DevOps engineers. The develop branch for development activities, release branch for your current release activity, main branch for keeping a golden copy of production code and and taking care of ECRs, and the feature branch if you have any such requirement wherein you want to have a UAT kind of testing done. You'll have this feature branch created. Now all these branches you're creating, based on these branches you'll have your build and the release pipelines created. What will you create? Your build and the release pipeline. Anyone questions?
There's one more branch that I normally see, hotfix.
Okay,
Can you talk?
yeah, hotfix is not a branch which will create or manage. Hotfix is when there is a bug, and if there's a bug and something, the developer is working on those bugs, any fixes which is required. So what, this is more like this branch. So when what I say, a temporary branch, so you call it as hotfix branch, or user, based on user story they create the branch. So hotfix is basically these branch what the developer is creates, and he starts working on it, and then later it will be part of this your develop and release branch itself. But if you have a different strategy, suppose you don't have a, you guys don't have a concept of temp branch, you create a hotfix branch where you move everything to your hotfix. Okay, then from there you deploy it into your dev and other environment, flow environment. So yeah, depending what strategy you follow, this hotfix branch is basically created just for, if you want to fix any sort of bug, any sort of issues, then you create this hotfix branch. Later that will be part of your mainstream only. These are your mainstream branches. Develop, release, main, feature, these are all your mainstream branches. But yeah. It could be depending upon what project you're working. If they don't have this release and all, then they have hotfix branches also, from where they do all this bug and fixing. Okay, so that hotfix is basically you can take it at this branch which the developer will be creating for himself.
Yeah, sometimes it is not, because hotfix, sometimes it is created out of main. For something, there's a bug in production,
Correct.
they can just get it from the main. So it's not necessarily that temp branch, but sometimes it can be, depending on where the bug is,
No, suppose if you have a bug in production, you have found a bug in production, for example, directly you will not jump onto main. You'll have to put things in your lower environment first, test it, then eventually put it in production. So all your branches, the point is whatever method you follow, it doesn't matter. Whatever method you follow, all your branches needs to be in sync. That is important. So what will happen, suppose if I take your words and if I put directly into main and fix my production, I am leaving all my previous branches aside. It's not in sync. So even though if it is you have found something in production, you have to go through all your lower and all your branches. You have to make sure all your lower environment is in sync, all your branches in sync. Because what will happen, you have fixed your things in production, imagine. And that same part of code is there somewhere in QA and dev also. That will introduce the bug again in somewhere down the line. Okay. So
yeah.
if you're fixing something in production, you need to have the same piece of code in your lower environment also. So you can directly not point things to production. Just keep that in mind. If someone is doing in your company, in your project, that's a wrong way of doing things, guys. The developer, if suppose the DevOps, if there is no DevOps engineer in your company and the developer is handling everything by themselves, so they don't follow all this, guys. Let's be very straightforward. They don't follow these strategies. They do whatever they want. Okay, they think, okay, there's an issue in production, they directly go in production, do the changes. Okay, they think there's an issue in UAT, they directly go to UAT and start doing the changes. They do all the tweaking because, so that's why your DevOps, your development, your QA, all this team should be kept separate. They should have their own roles and responsibility and no one should interfere. Let me tell you, I handle 150 plus developers all by myself. This is the strategy which I have applied over there with all the policies, and no developer dares to do directly on production. They have to follow the same flow, and if they need any special approval, then they need to get the approvals first before going and doing anything in production. Because tomorrow, if anything happens, if the branches go out of sync, DevOps engineer will be the first person who will be called out why these branches are out of sync, why there is a issue, why this release branch got corrupted. So yeah, we'll have to take care of all this. Yeah, any company, see, this is something I'm talking about template. This template may differ from company to company, from project to project, from mindset to mindset. Okay, your developer is very senior, no, we'll not follow this. I'll have hotfix and I'll deploy things directly from hotfix branch to production. You cannot stop him. Okay, but if there is a proper DevOps team, and if you have been given the responsibility of setting the branching and merging strategy and all by yourself, then yeah, your developer has to listen to you. You will give them the policy, this is the strategy, and everyone has to follow the strategy. That's it, nothing else. Okay, and you need to train everyone, this is what we have set up, and you need to follow all this place. If there's a hot fix or anything as such, this is how you need to do. Even the bug will have to follow the same route, entire same route. Okay, what did I say? A bug can be released in the next release. Bug is not a ECR. Okay, bug is not a issue, don't get confused. We have already given the difference between issue and bug. Bug is something which can be deployed in the next release. If that can be deployed in the next release, that can take the same route. Okay, don't worry about this diagram, this scribbling. I have a nice looking diagram created which I'll share with you guys for your reference. Okay, anyone, any questions, guys, before we wind up the call for today?
Yeah, hi. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand the difference between the temp branch and the feature branch, in the relation to user stories, because at work we use feature most of the time when we pick up a story from the Jira board, and um, then but that look it's the way you've described it, it sounds like the temp branch.
Okay. So what you guys follow, the feature is just a naming convention which you have given. So the one which you create, basically it's nothing but it's a temp branch what you create. It's a temporary branch. So you created a user story. A user story has been assigned to you. That user story has some task. Like, and you need to start working on that task. How do you do it? The first thing is you need to create your own branch. You cannot directly work onto the develop. So
Mhm.
the naming convention, it's just about naming convention. In your case, you name it as feature followed by your user story number. So basically a new feature you're developing. Okay. You start working. So this is basically a temporary branch only. The feature branch which you create. This feature is different, and the one which you create, that is different. That is temporary branch. That branch is only specific to that user story. Like suppose user story 123 has some sort of modules development. So a developer needs to have some sort of branches locally, correct? How will he work at the first point? Will he go and clone your develop branch and start working on develop branch? No, that is absolutely wrong. So what he will do, he will create a feature. So you name it as feature 123 based on your user story. He clones that branch and start working on that feature 123 branch. And once he's done with his development, he pushes the changes to feature 123 branch. Then from there, the PR gets created from feature 123 branch to the develop branch. That is how he will be working. So in your case, the feature what you use, the term what you use, the naming convention what you use, it's nothing but very similar to your temporary branch. That's why I call it as temporary branch.
Okay, so basically the difference is that this green feature goes
Mm-hmm.
into UAT for like a customer to look at it, and the
Correct.
temporary branch is like a local branch for you to work on.
Correct.
Is that right?
Absolutely. So guys, tomorrow onwards, we'll start with the first build pipeline and my first application. I want you guys to use Visual Studio. You use Visual Studio 2019, 2022, that doesn't matter. Get the latest version of Visual Studio. I'll be using 2019. So if you want to have the same 2019, this is the link. It's a free open source. Just go and download this. This is for Mac also and Windows also, in case you guys are using Mac. Just download and install 2019 Visual Studio on your system. Now when you install 2019, there will be some sort of installer which can open automatically. In this installer, I want two plugins. So the plugins are, I need ASP.NET Web Development plugin and Azure Development plugin. These are the two plugins, and make sure to have this plugin also, .NET Desktop Development. 1, 2, 3. These three plugins, make sure to download and keep it. Okay. Tomorrow we'll create our own application. So just to give you a complete end-to-end glimpse, I'll be creating a .NET application. You don't need to create it, guys. I'll be sharing those projects with you guys, and we'll create the first build pipeline. Okay. Any questions, any doubt, please do let me know, or else we can wind up the call for today. No questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Let's meet up tomorrow and let's start with actual CI/CD. Bye bye.